All right, should we get going? Joss, are you there?
I'm here. Sorry. Hi, guys.
Yay.
I know that Jocelyn's coming, Jocelyn Cox. I think we'll get a few more.
Okay,
But,
so
but
wait,
I'm glad we're here.
wait a few minutes.
Yeah. Yeah, it'll be good. Lindsay, I think I've seen you on Instagram. Is that right? Have I?
Hope you're muted.
Thank you. Yes, you probably have.
Yes, I've seen your name.
And
Yeah.
you do. Yeah. Thanks for the follow.
Yeah.
Fun to share the love.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are you working on?
I have a memoir coming out in June next year, about my experience being a carrier of a cancer-causing gene and whether or not I want to pass that on to my children. And then finding out I do IVF and I have a child that has it, then it's like, oh, do I actually go through with not having her or what?
Right.
So
Right.
fun
So
times.
light. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So light, exactly. But
Yeah, right.
I'm
So
reading
it's like
fears, and it's
like a
good to
beach,
have these channels to express these things, right?
Yeah.
It is.
And
It's
to share
fantastic.
our
Hi,
stories.
Carol.
a beach read, right?
Yeah.
It's actually, yeah, but it's a great story and it's told really beautifully. So
Mhm.
you could read it on the beach, I think. Hi,
Fun.
how's Oh,
Yeah,
good.
no,
Oh,
Ren,
wow. This is
definitely.
big turnout.
We're
Yay.
getting some.
Yay. That's lovely.
Yay. Oh,
Ah,
good. There's Jocelyn. Okay, good.
this
Good.
is great.
It's so funny. We have two Jocelyns and two Coxes.
Uh-huh.
Ooh.
So good.
That's fun.
All right. Well, welcome. Should I introduce or how do we want to start? I guess I'll just say
Introduce.
this. I'll just say Ren, I have your book. I have not read the book because every time I go to get the book, it's at we have this is like such a whatever third, problems, but it's at the other house. It's at our
Oh.
cabin. And every time I've gone to pick it up, I'm like, oh, it's at the cabin. So I
Uh-huh.
haven't read it, but I am so
Have you
excited.
thought of buying another copy?
I have
There you
actually.
go.
I almost did. I almost did. I know.
Oh, oh my goodness.
I don't know. Anyway,
Right.
but I'm so glad you're here. I feel like just everything about this experience of this book is really fascinating. And so I'm looking forward to hearing what Amy. So Amy, this is Amy. Amy's going to lead us today in this amazing event with Ren and Ren's new book Bigger, which is a book of essays, but they're personal stories. So I think a lot of us have worked in memoir. I think almost everybody here at some point has worked in memoir. So this will be really cool. And Amy, can I let you take it away?
Sure, thanks, Joss. Hi everyone. Thanks for showing up. It's a busy time of year. We've got in the middle of Hanukkah, we got Christmas next week, and oh yeah, floods and all sorts of things where I'm at. So
Yeah.
and Ren as well. Ren flew Ren flew home into the Godzilla apocalyptic river as they've coined this one. It's they got to call it something. Anyway, Ren and I met through an MFA program at Pacific University, and um, the bigger wasn't even on. I think had you submitted it, Ren, when you started the
Yes.
program?
Yes. And right when I met you that week, it had been a finalist in a different book competition. And I thought, oh, what if they announce this week? And it didn't happen. So I never told all of you.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, she was sneaky, and then we all found out. Here we are, trying to figure out how to be writers, and Ren's like, "Yeah, I got this book too," but but no, we were thrilled for you is the truth of it. And so, Ren, your book, in my estimation, has been really successful. I've seen it in every bookstore I've been in, which is kind of unusual for, I mean, part of it may be because you're, from the Pacific Northwest, and that's where I
Right.
am also. But I saw it in San Diego, and another friend of ours saw it in New York. So word has gotten around, and for very good reason. I've read it now three times, and it's just it's a great read. And there's something incredibly unique about it, but also, um, it kind of has hit at a perfect time because I think a lot of people are thinking about issues of diversity. And so I'm going to ask you just to start out a little high level. We're all, I think, aspiring authors here. So tell us about uh, your process or how this came to be in print and why you think it's so successful for it having come from a small press. I'm sometimes we're a little bit skeptical of small presses, and I think that small presses get a bit of a bum rap. So give us your small press pitch.
Okay. So first you asked how it came to be, and then second was small press. I talk really randomly, so I have to take notes so I know what I'm saying. So I wrote essays. I started taking writing classes as my pandemic project, so in September 2020, and it was a beginning memoir class, but they had us write essays for the stuff we turned in because you can't write a whole book, and and then a few of my essays, my instructor said, you should submit these to literary journals, which I'd never heard of. So I started submitting, and I thought early on the reason that an essay got accepted, I think it was the fourth time I submitted something, and that seemed really early because you're supposed to submit 100 times, right, before you get something published. And I thought it was because I wrote about my child coming out as trans. But then over time, I wrote different essays, and they also got published. So at one point there, I had published about 5 essays. This was by summer of 23, I believe. And I'd written about a dozen essays. Not all of them were completely finished, but about a dozen essays I felt like had potential. And then I saw in Poets and Writers magazine that they had these book contests. And I didn't believe I was capable of the traditional publishing route, like getting an agent. I had no social media presence. I had no Instagram. I'm in no way a celebrity. I knew nothing about publishing. But then here was this book contest, and there were actually several from these small independent presses. And I researched the presses so they weren't, things you wouldn't want to submit to, and started submitting. And occasionally the editors would say, like, it would get to be semi-finalists and finalists. I think by the time it got to Autumn House Press, it was the third time it was a finalist. And some of those editors or publishers would email me and say, like one was from Santa Fe Literary Project, whatever that one is called. And Andrew there, he said, this book is almost a memoir in essays, and it would just take some revision to be publishable. And I thought, oh, okay, well, let me try to make it more into a memoir and essays. And then after about 9 months of submitting it, I think I submitted it to 7 different publishers, and it was all either open submissions, you don't need an agent, or writing contests. And then Autumn House Press, um, I knew that I was a finalist and I wasn't hearing anything. And I assumed, like always a bridesmaid, never a bride, I assumed it would be that. And then I get an email one morning from the publisher at Autumn House Press. Her name's Christine Stroud. And she said, can you give me your phone number? And I thought, well, that's got to be good news, right? Like they don't call you to reject you. But I didn't know. I'm new to all of this. And so yeah, she called and she said I'd won their nonfiction writing contest for that year and offered me a contract. And I'd already researched Autumn House Press. I felt great about it. The next year, they actually won the AWP Small Press Award. So it's a really good press. And started that whole process. And then I worked with my editor there, who was fantastic. And I said, I really want to turn this instead of essays that are all about like quirky things in my family. I want to add some narrative arc. So they are all essays. But if you've read it, there's, like I change from beginning to end, my child changes, and my mom changes from beginning to end. So we did that. That was question one. Question two was working with a small press, right? I loved working with Autumn House Press. I think there are a lot of really high quality, independent, small presses and university presses out there where people are pursuing art. Autumn House is like their mission is to find emergent writers. that they want to promote. They actually printed Ada Lamone's first two books of poetry. She was the Nobel Poet Laureate, not Nobel, the National Poet Laureate. Um, yeah, I don't know. Do you have a specific question about that, Amy? About
Yeah, would
working with
you,
Autumn
would you,
House?
would you, so it sounds like you would recommend small presses as
So it depends what you want. I
yeah.
mean, my small press has virtually no marketing budget. And so they submitted the book to a few of the big review places. I got no big reviews, no New York Times, nothing like that. And they have no West Coast presence. I'm in Seattle, and so they said you're on your own for a book tour, and there is a very small stipend for marketing, and so they suggested I talk to friends and see if I could stay at friends' houses and do a book tour that way to save money. And so I just researched online what you do, and then I probably sent emails to 40 local bookstores, and I would say local Washington, Oregon, and some California. And most bookstores I never heard back from. A few really took time, like wrote multi-paragraph email responses about why they couldn't host me. And that was, I'm a small press, and they've had problems with small presses actually having the books available on time. And it's personal essays, and there just aren't as many readers for personal essays. And there might have been one other reason it might come to me. But I thought it was amazing that they wrote to me. What I found out later is I should have just emailed every bookstore out there, right? Like this is something you could do. Email every single bookstore. And it does take some work because you have to do your best to look up who the events manager is at the bookstore. But Google has so much information. And then I also found, especially as I got closer and my book was out there, they almost all had a link to my book through Bookshop. So I would capture that link and put it into the email so that they could see, right, that I personalized the email. But because of that, I think that's why there are bookstores that became aware of my book, right? So I was asking for a book event, and instead I got them to order a few books, which was great. Um, then I ended up with too many book events, it felt like, because I don't have that many friends like in Seattle. I mean, I have friends, obviously, but like they all showed up for my book launch. So then only five showed up for this little bookstore in Seattle. But then I got 20 at this one. And at this point, I'm now combining my book events with other writer friends whom I've met. And so we're getting about 20 at each one. Um, so small press, I think if your goal is giant book sales, I'm not sure small press is the way to go, unless you're going to do like Jocelyn Cox has done and devote an innumerable hours to promoting your book. And due to my autoimmune disease, I'm not going to do that, right? Like I'm going to focus on my health before book promotion. But Jocelyn and I, by the way, we emailed. So Lindsay was saying your book is coming out in June. So at some point, and this is always recommended, you meet somebody else who has a book coming out around the same time. It doesn't have to be the same genre. But then Jocelyn and she reached out and we Zoomed and we shared information and we shared resources and even contacts. So that's the thing with a small press. It's a little bit do it yourself for publicity. Yeah.
Okay. And I love I love this question. So I've asked it before, but I love your answer too. And so um could you tell us how Bigger got its name? And also this will give you an opportunity to hold the book up, a little bit about the cover design.
Okay, I love this cover. I was afraid, I don't know if you can see it there. I was afraid that they would make my book look dark. For one thing, it is a trend right now in book covers that they're a dark purple, a dark brown, a dark black. Um, and I didn't want people to see the color or the image on the book and feel like they're going into something dark because I do talk about some dark things in my book. I mean, transphobia and, and all I did, let's see, Autumn House Press said, look at all of our covers in our gallery. Oh, they said, yeah, yeah, what's your plan? What is it you want for the book cover? And I'm like, okay, I never thought I was going to publish a book, so I have no plan for the book cover. They said, look at the photos in our gallery. And I picked out three and I sent them. And because of the way I am, I didn't just send the photos. I had like a 3-page bullet point thing about what I liked and didn't like. And it turned out all three I picked were by the graphic designer Joel Coggins. And so they reached out to him and asked if he would design the cover. And it was a complete surprise. There were like three options. One was like a vase with flowers, but this one is trees. And my child is a scientist, and so they double checked for me. And yes, those are cedar trees, like my name. And I don't know if you can see it, but there are eagles flying up there, right? Just like this uplifting and orange. He chose orange. And then there's like back and forth on the cover, like what colors should these be and what should the words do in here and everything. And um, I felt like the cover really added. The other thing I've had booksellers tell me is it's the kind of cover they want to face forward on their shelves, right? Which is fantastic. So that was the cover. What was the other question, Amy?
But just where did the title come from?
Yeah. Okay, so I threw all these essays together. This is before I submitted anywhere and tried to figure out an order for them and tried to figure out which essays should go into the collection, which not. So I made a spreadsheet and it had like 42 columns. And I included like opening lines and closing lines and themes and all these different things. And one thing I included was my favorite line from each essay, partly because I was getting so into spreadsheet and I wanted to get back to the heart, right? And so a line from the first essay, which is called Naming My Father, it's at the end of it. Um, at the end, the last, well, I'll read the last paragraph. So my father was neurodiverse. We did not know this growing up. He could not tell my sisters and I apart. There are four of us, and he would call out all our names or he would call out you. Um, and I thought he didn't love us. He didn't talk to us, by the way, unless he was quizzing us, or screaming. Um, and then I got to adulthood and I actually ended up teaching children on the autism spectrum. And still, it took another more than 10 years of that before I go, huh, and started to recognize this in my dad. By that time, he had passed away. But I was talking by the end about how if I had known what I would have done differently, if I had known, I would have said my name to him every time I saw him, right? And at the end, I say, I would have given him my name every time I saw him. I would have realized that before he drove up to San Francisco, he must have researched facts about the city as a way of connecting with me, because he would just give me a lecture on San Francisco history. I would have grown up confident he loved me, because he must have. He wanted me to know all the countries in the world, all the stories in his Bible, all the histories he could share. He wanted my world to be bigger, which is what we want for those we love. So that was it. But I also noticed in every essay, in many of the essays, my favorite lines had to do with expansion, something growing, something getting bigger. And I realized that all of the essays fell into two categories. They were either about how loving people who are different from us makes our world bigger, or they were about what I said there, which is when we love people, we want their world to be bigger.
So you touched on the fact that you were the director of a preschool, and I'm just curious so it has not been my experience that all parents want their world to be bigger, right? I think
Yeah.
sometimes, or maybe they want it, but they do something that is limiting. Because I know, for instance, from speaking from personal experience, my mother was jealous of my success because she gave up her career to raise a family. And that's what people did in those days. You know, she quit
Yeah.
her job and stayed home and raised a family. And so there was this push-pull of like pride, but also like wanting to live vicariously, but not wanting me to be too
Hmm.
successful. So not surpass her in some way. Um, in your experience working with young children, um, and their families, which I'm sure it's probably harder working with the parents than the children in most
Yes.
instances. Um, how do you go about encouraging parents to help their world be bigger?
Yeah, well, one thing is I designed a preschool that is focused on inquiry learning, which is the idea of instead of there being a set of knowledge that we need to shove into children's heads, our goal as educators is to help children to learn to think for themselves. And yes, there's a level of basic skills our kids need to learn. I mean, we worked on letters and numbers and colors and all that, right? But we had a lot of these open-ended projects, and it was a really different thing for some parents who would come in and say, okay, but where does my child rank in their classroom? And it's like they're three. There is no ranking going on. Um, it's long term. I don't think it's from one of my parent education talks. Um, and some of it was asking parents what they remember as the most exciting part of their childhood or their school years. And almost always it came down to an assignment that they could connect to and make it their own. It was either something they already loved or they were allowed to be a little open-ended. It was never studying for the SATs, right? So there's that. My hope then was that parents would take that, and my school was in Bellevue, Washington. That's where Microsoft is. So these are very high, many of them high achieving parents, and many of them immigrants, so coming from very traditional academic backgrounds. And I hoped that they would then take this preschool experience and and think about that as their child moved into older grades. But many of them chose the most traditional academic, uniforms, rigid education programs because that's what they were comfortable with. Now, many kids will thrive in any kind of school program, but um, yeah, part of us limiting our children, for those of us who have children, is just fear. Like we want to protect our babies more than anything, right? So I've always said, I want my child Indigo to have a big life but never get hurt, right? Which isn't going to happen. So place of love, but it's misplaced love. Some of limiting children is the parent is limited themselves, right? Like you talked about, your mother was jealous. Um, and I will also say in this ending that that's part of this genre of memoir where we get to take a story and build meaning. And the meaning I choose to build is that my dad loved me, right? Can I guarantee that he felt love in any way that I could connect? No, I never felt loved as a child. But I choose to believe, having researched all of this and really thought deeply, right, about how he operated in the world, that he did. It just wasn't a normal kind of love, right? So I told you in an interview, Amy, it's an aspirational belief that we want our world to be bigger for the people we love.
Yeah. Um, well, as you said, all the essays have that feel about them, which is part of what makes the book so good. Is that almost like you're giving us permission, even though you're not our parent, to be bigger. And that's just a lovely feeling.
So
Uh,
sweet, thank you.
yeah. So I just recently read Jen Shaplin's collection of essays, Thin Skin, which I thought of you throughout because there was so much research in that book. And your book has a fair amount of research. Every essay has something in it that I'm fairly certain you researched.
Mm.
Was that always your intention and to have researched essays, or um, is that just your nature, or did it just happen that way?
Yeah, I think I'm just geeky. I think I think the first time in a writing class that the instructor handed us an essay. So every month she would give us an essay, and then the next month or week, I guess they were weekly classes, we would talk about the essay, and then there'd be a writing assignment, right? And the first essay she gave us was, oh, I'm going to say it wrong. It was the Four States of Matter, Joanne Beard's. Have we read that? And I thought, this is terrible. There's like run-on sentences and fragments. These characters pop in. Like, I did not know how to read an essay. And I was horrified. And I thought, this is not good writing. And then about 6 months later, in a different class, an instructor gave the same essay. And by then, I'd been exposed to enough of this writing that I thought, I love the complexity. I love, this crafting of weaving the story. And I think I really had to overcome the creative writing that you get in middle school and high school where there's all these rules, right? Excuse me, I have a cold. And so part of it was being exposed to really great essays. I just fell in love with complicated essays. And so I just started reading everything. I found out later that one of the books I loved, Harp is in the Stars, something like that. There was an essay that I loved there. And then it turned out Amy Roost wrote it. Like, isn't that wild? Which I only discovered, what, in the last few months I was rereading the book. Like, Amy. First I checked, like, are you the Amy Roost too?
I have my secrets too,
Yeah.
okay?
So yeah, I just like research, and I read essays that included research. Obviously, a big struggle in including research is how to make it not be clunky. I don't know if any of you saw the meme about creative writers are like, I remember walking around Coney Island and eating a hot dog with my uncle when I was 6 and the sand was hot. And then like the little star asterisk. Hot dogs were invented in 1926. Like this clunky way of inserting research. So I knew I didn't want to do that. But a lot of that is reading other people's really great writing and looking at how they include research. So I did that. And then some of it is like I was telling you, Amy, one time, it's stuff that was in my head, but I had to find out if it was true. Like my mom said, where she was born in Ecuador was at the foot of Chimborazo, which is a volcano. I think I didn't even know it was a volcano. It was always a mountain in my mind. And then I thought, well, she was a kid. Does she even really know where she was born? And so I researched it, and Chimborazo is this amazing. It's a volcano. It's dormant. It has snow, so it's right on the equator, but it has snow. People have died by freezing right on the equator there. Ralph Waldo Emerson saw Chimborazo and used it as an image in one of his poems of an artist striving for the greatest creativity and achievement. When you research things, sometimes you find things there that are simply poetic, right? Or where you think, oh, I wish I could move this into the story. So Amy knows one of my earlier essays, oh, the Naming My Father essay has an alligator in it because my dad had a pet alligator. And so there's one or two things where the alligator comes in, and it was published in Under the Sun literary magazine, and the editors there said, hey, we were wondering about including a little more alligator. This alligator stuff is kind of interesting. Has nothing to do with the storyline, right? But just like, could we drop it in? So I researched alligators, and I found things that, oh, this is this amazing metaphor for this part. And I threw in like 3 or 4 more alligator tidbits. And then they went, yeah, I think it's better just with the original too. Um, but it was great, right? It was great to do all of that writing practice in how to include research, right? That, so yeah.
So you mentioned was it something that your mother said, and you wondered, was it true?
Yeah.
And you have a whole essay about truth called
Oh yeah.
Four Words. And
Yes.
it is on many levels, as are all your essays work on various levels. But first of all, it's a hermit crab essay. And secondly, the way it's structured is very interesting. So could you say, I'm not going to.
Will you quickly say what a hermit crab essay is?
Oh, sure. So like a hermit crab essay is something that appears to be something else, like grocery list, but is actually a story told via this container that you wouldn't normally associate with an essay. Is that fair
Yeah,
assessment?
that's good. Yeah,
Yeah,
you
okay.
take a different writing form. So instead of, I'm going to write a story in the form of a story, right? I'm going to write a story in the form of an ABC book
Or a
or
recipe.
a grocery
Yeah,
list. Yeah.
They
yeah,
they it's the idea they call it hermit crab because the soft, mushy, emotional parts are sort of encased in a shell that's a little bit like gives it some humor or gives it a little bit of distancing, right, from the actual story. So sorry.
yeah.
Go on.
Yeah. Good.
So, okay.
So in 4 words, um, I I don't know. I wanted to write about this thing. My sisters and I started Zooming every Sunday night during the pandemic, and we were somehow it came up that my family was fundamentalist, and so like you can never lie. You may never lie. Except there was this one time our mother told a lie, and it was to save one of my sisters from our dad's explosion. And so we were talking about it, and I just wanted to examine that. And I had studied ethics in grad school, and so I brought some of that research in. I had to go back to my notes, which was really funny. And but I didn't have the right structure. And for me, with each of my essays, it's like I could see this is becoming something I believe this is worthy of my work. But until it clicks into place with a particular structure, it doesn't become what it's supposed to be. And so this one, I was checking a Bible verse because it was in the essay. And the Bible I happened to open up online had commentary. So in religious books like the Bible, the Talmud, often off to one side, a religious scholar has written, here's a way to interpret this, right? Or just something about the actual, so there's the real book and there's the interpretation. And I thought, oh, I'm going to do my essay as commentary. So it opened it up that I could write this essay about this experience of what it meant that our mother told a lie and really how it changed my ability to view the world, and also my relationship to lying and truth. But then off to the side here, I could either add more facts, or I could be snarky, or I could, yeah. Did you say, Amy, there's a question? Did you see there's a question in the chat? Um,
Oh,
oh,
sorry.
is there more than one?
Uh, oh, yes, okay. Um, Francis, hi, Francis, um, asked, what did your editor do to help craft your essays into a memoir? Can you tell us about that?
Oh, yeah, my editor was Hattie Fletcher. She was the managing editor at Creative Nonfiction for 17 years, and then she went out on her own, and then Autumn House Press hired her. So I just lucky got her right when she started at Autumn House Press. So we met, we Zoomed. I think she had read it quickly, but then she said, what is it that you want your book to be? And I said, I want it to be a memoir and essays. I want it to have more narrative flow. Um, I didn't really know what to ask for, but I wanted to I wanted it to be better than it was, really. And she said, "Okay, I'm going to go away for a few months and I'm going to read your book and I'm going to think about this." And she came back and she, for one thing, of course, had reordered the essays. There was a particular essay that I thought was really weak, and she said, "Oh no, we're putting this second. This is, that would be one of your stronger essays." Um, and she talked about what we would need to do, to turn it into closer to a memoir, not fully a memoir. Um, yeah, it was back and forth. It was 4 or 5 months of back and forth on this. Um, and it wasn't the low level stuff like commas, but of course both of us are geeks about grammar, so we were fixing everything. So I really thought at the point it was going off to the copy editor who checks every little detail. They maybe we'd come back with like a gold star, but no, there was still like 56 commas that were out of place or missing or what. So it was a giant process, and I'm so grateful. I had excellent editing. The book is way better than it was when I sent it off to Autumn House Press.
And we'll get to a reading. Carol asked if you would read from it, and we have till 5, Joss. I mean, till the end of the hour, is that
Or
it?
8, yeah, depending on where you are.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right, exactly. Sorry. End of the hour.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So before we get to your giving us a little sampling, tell us how this book almost didn't get published after you had signed your contract.
So by the time Patty and I finished editing and we sent it off to the copy editor, um, right around then it was the inauguration. And a couple of the essays in here, I talk about my child coming out as trans in middle school. And you may not be aware, but in the 8 days after the inauguration, um, President Trump signed, I think, 6 executive orders that dehumanized trans people and took away civil rights from trans people. And it was very scary. I also was aware of stuff in Project 2025, the idea of we should create a registry of trans people. They don't say for what, but that can't be something good. It was very, very scary. My child Indigo is now 26. And all the way through, it's been interesting to have people say, has Indigo read the book? Or does Indigo know about your book? And I'm thinking, I would never write about my child without, right, their total involvement. They checked essays before I ever sent them off to a workshop in class. Um, and so we had had conversations after the election and our family felt we would go forward. We had no idea that the anti-trans extremism would be so quick and horrifying and referring to my child as somebody who has no morals. I mean, it's unbelievable. So I right after the inauguration and all these executive orders, and it felt like, how bad is it going to get? Is my child in danger just right now? And so I called the editor, my publisher, Christine Stroud, and I said, I am scared to publish because here's this book which I thought might help people better understand what it's like to raise, to have a trans person you love in your family, and instead I could be endangering my child. And I guess I should tell you, Indigo is a pseudonym. I mean, I did that part, and my child has a different last name for me, so there's that part. Um, and the publisher said, like, we will honor anything you want. We will release you from your contract. We won't charge you for anything, I mean, make us pay back the editor or anything like that. We will support this. We understand it. But she said, we think this book is important to go out into the world. And she said, I want to meet with my board. It's a nonprofit. So she met with her board and they all agreed. They said, we want to be honest. We don't have the money to pay legal fees. So just in case stuff happened, right? Because Project 2025 also talks about jailing authors who support, I'm not sure of their language, but gender diversity, right? So it was scary. And so I talked with my kid again, talked with my partner again, talked with my mama friends who are not writers, and they said, oh, you can't put the book out there. Your number one thing is your kid. Talked with my writer friends who said, you have to publish. And they said, maybe the book will get banned and then you'll sell more copies. And then I thought I would reach out to trans authors like Jennifer Finney Boylan, great memoirs. She just came out with Cleavage, which is like as a trans woman going into middle age, right? It's fantastic memoir. And I didn't know her, but I found her email on her website and I told her my situation and could she give me advice? And her book had just been reviewed in New York Times, so I figured there's no way she's going to respond. But 2 days later, she sends me an email, a couple of paragraphs long, and among it, she says, don't let the bastards win, or whatever that Latin quote is from Handmaid's Tale. Um, I contacted a few other people, not just people who are trans authors, a writer of color who has experienced racist, feedback over social media, just people like how to be brave. And then our kid was in town, and so we invited them over for dinner. And I said, I just need you to be honest with me because I thought when Indigo said, I want you to publish this book, even after all of this. I thought it's because I'm intimidating as a mother and my child is scared to tell me that and so I can't cry. That's one thing in the book. I have an autoimmune disease and I can't cry, but I felt this overwhelming, like, I wish I could cry. And we're at dinner And I say, you need to be honest with me about whether you want me to publish my book. I'm going to tear up right now, even though I don't have tears. And my kids said, first they go, Mama, I'm a trans person walking around in America. I already live in danger. And your little book of literary essays adds like a molecule to the danger. And then they said, Mama, what did they say? My concern, my repeated concerns about publishing this book felt like I wasn't standing with them. And if I was going to stand with them, I need to put this in the world. And yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Um, I'm sorry to compare you. Comparisons are sometimes good and sometimes not good. Jen Chaplin was a compliment. Um, I just, I've been going through it here lately on a personal level, and I've been reading just fluff, and I have picked up The Great Big Beautiful World by Emily Henry. I've never read an Emily Henry book. Funny story, there's like a lot of sort of drawn out erotic scenes in the book, and I was coming home from a funeral with my son in the car, and one of those scenes was playing when we turned on the car, and we'd both just been crying, and we both burst out laughing, which was very nice little respite from the grief. But uh, there was a lot of parts in that book where I was like, how did the editor allow this? Because there were so many sensory details, but they just went on, and they were a little bit how shall I say? I mean, there were a lot of gestures with eyebrows. Like maybe I'm talking like maybe 50 eyebrow gestures in the book, like, and I was just thinking like this would never, cut it in a workshop like at a MFA program. This would get ripped to shreds. And so I was as I was, it's hard to read things that you think, this is like, but your use of sensory details, I found to be not only just the right amount, but it really is what drew me into the book in the first place was your use of the sensory details. So I'm just kind of curious about that. Was that a learned thing, or was it something
Mm.
that you needed to really work on? And did somebody tell you you needed to work on it?
Well, part of it is me that I was a kid who needed a huge amount of sensation. Have you heard of those tanks where you're immersed and oh, sensory deprivation tanks? That would be total hell for me. I can't even take a bath. Like to take a bath, I have candles, I have music, I have chocolates. I would like to have a friend in the bathtub with me. Like I need a huge amount of sensory input. And then I got this autoimmune disease about 20 years ago, and I can't cry and it's a lack of moisture. My mouth doesn't make saliva, so it's changed to it's decreased taste. I can still taste, but with because of no moisture in my nose, I lost my sense of smell, right? And I'm constantly grabbing sensory. And so my partner found this shampoo that's peppermint oil, tea tree oil, and it tingles my hair. And so he put it into a green bottle so it would be like peppermint and right so I can pretend to have the sensory. My kid grew up knowing to say, "Oh, Mama, I smell the coffee" when we'd go past, a cop. We're in Seattle, so because I have strong sense memories. So I think part of sensory description is that is what I crave, even more so because I am deprived of a couple of senses. And then, yes, in writing classes, they tell us to add sensory detail. And I did not understand it. I thought it's like, oh, so her shirt was blue, even though it has nothing to do with the story, right? I just thought, oh, just throw any random detail in. I was taking a class with Sonora Jha, who has a book that's just come out. I forget the name of it. And she read from her How to Raise a Feminist Son. And it was a scene where she was trying to, in the scene, say that she was scared that because she was divorced, she hadn't taught her son how to love. And they were screaming at each other. He was about to leave for college, and that's what kids do when they're about to leave for college. And everything in her is so afraid she's been a terrible mother and hasn't taught him how to love. And he's so angry and he slams out of the house, except he stops carefully to close the door because he knows she loves the stained glass window in her door. Like that's a detail, right? That helps tell the story. Um, so yeah, I had great instruction. I had to really think about it. It is still a struggle. I mean, in my early drafts, there isn't sensory detail. I'm really just going, this happened, this happened, this happened. Or sometimes I do like in capital letters or a different font. I wanna say this, and then I get back to it, right? And I've gone way too far with sensory detail too, right? And that sometimes takes my workshop people to go, like three adjectives is enough. We don't need all seven or whatever I'm doing.
Yeah, I guess what I was
Yeah,
trying to say is it doesn't feel gratuitous at all. And I know that that's just also good editing, but I was,
it's good editing. Yeah.
curious how you how and why you decided to bring in so much sensory detail, and it just works incredibly well. We have a question here from Jen. Jen Cox, how do you add sensory detail if you can't experience it yourself? And we had a classmate at, this is interesting because it
Yes.
reminds me of
Yeah.
Katie, but go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Our friend Katie, who is working on a memoir right now about she has aphantasia. She has no pictures in her mind. And she would hear, always people saying, picture an apple, right? And she just thought it was words. She thought it was just a saying. Kind of like I have certain colors that shimmer in my mind. So my child has synesthesia, and I'm not sure I do, but I always thought when people said, "What's your favorite color?" they meant, "What is the color that makes your whole body start shaking?" Which is what happens when I see the color indigo. Um, and so Katie can't picture things, but her descriptions are vivid because she has always had to, like, she can't picture it in her mind, but she has read what a horse looks like and in many different, ways. And so she then combines the words and creates an amazing description of a horse, even though she can't picture it in her mind. Yeah.
So I will go back to the research part because Francis asked another question about research, and I have another favorite essay that is was so well researched, but also so unexpected. How how did Little Woman make it into your essay? Was it eye contact, was
Eye
it?
contact.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Tell us about the essay, what it's about, and then explain how Little Woman work got in there, and then we'll get to Francis's question about research.
Okay, eye contact started with just a memory of when I was 30, teaching in a public school in a small town in Oregon, and didn't have my vision insurance had not kicked in yet from the school district. But when I went to the driver's test in Oregon, and they had me go up to, instead of looking at a chart, I had to look at these goggles, and my left eye saw nothing. And it was supposed to be a sailboat and a sunshine and something, right? And my right eye could see them. And my left eye, I'm like, no, there's nothing there. And they said, you should really see an eye doctor about this. And so the local university had an optometry school and they had a free clinic day. So I go to this clinic day and I make my way through all of these students, grad students, all the way up to the dean. And they're all trying to figure out why my left eye can't focus. And the dean says, your eyeball should be flip-flopping around in your head because it's basically a lazy eye, and yet it does not behave like a lazy eye. And I knew my left eye was weak. I did not know until then how weak it was because I'd always faked eye tests. Because my sister, when I was 5 years old and I went to take my first eye test, my sister was taking hers at the same time. She was a year older and she whispers to me, okay, so you just memorize the bottom letters, right? Because you have to do good on a test, is what she tells me. And we memorized a lot. We had to memorize Bible verses and state capitals and all of that. So we were good at memorizing. So I had just always done that. And so they never caught my lazy eye. The dean of optometry, and this was at Pacific University, Amy, where we're getting our MFA, he said, I think that because you're so social, because he had spent hours, and I'm talking with his grad students, and he said, I think you basically did eye exercises to have your eyes connect with people, right? So even though I don't see very much out of my left eye, right, I was doing that. So this essay started with that. And then my question was, well, Like, how is it I didn't even know how bad my left eye? I'm legally blind in my left eye, and I had no idea, right? And I'm 30 years old when I find this out. And so I also, as a teacher, one of my parent ed talks is about children who are field sensitive and field independent. Field independent is when you make your decisions within yourself. Like if the teacher says, I want you to take out your math textbook, there's nothing in you saying, I want to please my teacher and take out my math textbook, right? And if the story I give is here in Washington State, if you have a field sensitive kid, so that's the opposite now. So field sensitive, we want to do what everybody wants us to do, right? Like I would like to know what are you all going to wear today on our Zoom? I'm field sensitive, right? So as a teacher, if I said, what is the capital of Olympia? All the field sensitive kids go, oh, Olympia, right? Like we want to give the right answer. We want to please the teacher. The field independent kids are like, oh, W, right? The capital, right? They'll just come right, or they just won't even answer because their brain has gone off over here. So I combined those two things. I had to do a little more research about field independent and field sensitive. And then so I combined research about this, and it had to do with military pilots. Um, and then I also I was telling a story in the essay about being about 8 years old. So I made a list of like when I was 8, here were the things I liked, right? And among them was the book Little Women. And then I remembered, oh, I used to wish I was Joe. She was so independent, but I knew I was Beth, honestly. Like the Sorting Hat with Harry Potter. I'm a Hufflepuff, people.
Yeah.
You know.
That was really interesting to know if J.K. Rowling had like any sense of field independence and field sensitivity.
Yeah, I don't
But
know.
anyway, so I was just looking if there were any other. Oh, so yeah, back to Frances's question. She wanted to know, and it sounds like you answered this. Do you ever get off track in the middle of your research?
Yeah, have you heard me talk? Yeah.
Surprise!
I do, but it's never wasted. I mean, I'm writing for joy, right? I've already had my career. I make way more money as a parent educator than I will as a writer ever. Um, so, um, so I get to write for joy. And that means if I want to go down a rabbit hole with my research, I don't pull myself out of it. Um, and I am the type of writer where I want to get my writing done. So I've never done what many of you have done of pitching a memoir before it's fully written. Like I want my essays fully written, and I'm working on my second book right now, and I do not intend to write 3 chapters, write the outline, and then pitch it at that point. Because I'm random. I have no idea what this book is going to be, and to me that would feel like pressure, and I'm writing for joy. That was a random answer, huh?
The best essay in the book, I'll fight anybody over this, is Let Us Sit on the Lawn. Okay, it's subjective. I'll stop.
Amy's
Subjectively,
favorite.
I think the best essay in the book is Let Us Sit on the Lawn. And tell us about that. I'm just want to hear you talk about it.
Yeah. So, I had just started taking a writing class, and they said try to talk about like a really emotional time in your life. And my kid came out as trans in middle school, and I wasn't a writer at the time, but people at the time said, "Oh, you have to write about this." And it was like my kid was coming home from school every day and crumpling onto the kitchen floor, and I lay down behind them and held them while they cried for 2 hours. So no, I was not going to write about my kid at that time. And then they were away in college when I started during the pandemic. And so I called them and I said, how would you feel if I wrote about what we called the golden afternoon? When our kid came out as trans, um, we have such fond memories of that day. You should know my child was always gender diverse. It was not a shock. A month before they said, Mom, Dad, I'm transgender, they said something about gender being hard, and I said, "Oh, honey, is that because you're transgender?" But they were 14, so they snapped at me. I'm not trans, right? Because that's what 14-year-olds do. And then a month later, they came out, and I was super mature, and I did not say, "I told you so." But they say, Mom, Dad, I'm transgender. And a moment later, we are on the couch, all three of us wrapped around each other. We called it an indigo sandwich. We actually used their name. And it was a love fest. And we hung out, the three of us on the daybed the whole afternoon. Our dogs kept trying to climb up on top of us. So we grabbed our laptops and we're researching. We're laughing about like, oh, how did we not know this? So it's a different experience, which is one reason I wanted to write about it, because that's not usually the trans story we hear. Amy, what was our question?
Well,
I've
let's
gone off.
stop. Let's stop. And if you
Yeah.
will, because Jen is, we're all dying to hear a little bit. Can you read that last? I know you probably have something already picked out. So if
No,
you want
I
to do
don't.
that, do that. But if you want to make me cry, read the last part of Let Us Sit on the Lawn.
Okay, I'm going to read the last two pages because they go together really well. You should know in this essay, I reveal that two of my sisters are gender diverse, but they weren't allowed to be when they were children. So I refer to one as Alex, and I refer to one as the name Steve, which is actually what they called themselves as a child, which didn't fit their gender. Okay, so different characters here. After Indigo came out as non-binary in high school, my mother, Alex, and Alex's son were over one night for Jason's homemade pizza. Mom was 82 that year. Now, tell me non-binary again, Mom said. And Indigo skipped through cisgender, gender fluid, intersectionality, and gender assigned at birth. My mother nodded, but the language was too new. You can think about gender like this, I said, and I pulled over the notepad we kept on the counter. Draw 3 vertical lines and label them female, non-binary, and male. And non-binary is? Asked my mother. Not male, not female, said my nephew. Or both, said Indigo. And you put an X on each of the lines, higher or lower, to show how you see your gender. I marked an X at the top of the female line. I'm a lot female. I moved to the male line and put my X toward the bottom. I like to lead, and that is stereotypically male, so I feel a little bit male. And I feel a little non-binary because I want to wear a pretty dress while I pound my way through life. Okay, I'll try it, said my mother. She stared at the lines. Well, I love baseball, she said. She paused at the female line and shook her head. In the end, she marked herself low on the female line and high on the male and non-binary lines. I've never really been female, she said. Isn't that interesting? When Jason had the pizzas ready to slide into the backyard oven, he joined us and marked his gender lines with the rest of the family. None of us were 100% female or male. Nobody knew about this back then, said my mother. The grand diversity of gender will be more familiar for children who grow up today. A camp counselor will use they, them pronouns. A classmate will transition in elementary school. At a summer barbecue, an older cousin will say, people don't have to be boys or girls, Grandma. Let us sit on the lawn and imagine a time when a child tells their parent, I am trans, and their parent grew up in a world that made room for it, that helped them breathe it in. Let us sit on the lawn and listen to the parent say, I thought so. How wonderful. Come here, baby.
Oh my goodness. Gets me every time. Any other questions out there, or any that I missed? Put them in the chat, or feel free to just raise your hand and go ahead and ask.
That was
Or
beautiful.
don't raise your hand, just ask.
Yeah.
All right.
I guess I'll ask real quick, in your experience of being out there and sharing your story, what have been some of the best moments of readers that you have no idea and how it touched them and that sort of connective piece for being out in the world?
So I was just at a reading and I read one of the stories about a trans, my kid being trans. And there was a little trans girl in the audience. Her parents had read about my book, I think through Trans Families, an organization I'm with, and they showed up in Olympia, Washington. And this little girl was hungover, the parents are saying she's getting teased at school. They told me ahead of time. And her head is hung over. She's in like a fancy witch's dress. It was really cute. So she's a little trans girl. And I'm reading and I'm thinking, yeah, I'm reading one of these essays, right? And her head pops up and she goes, and she goes, I'm transgender. And this audience of like 20 people who were some people I knew, but some were just random. They were in the bookstore or they saw an ad or something, right? And and it became this love fest for this child. And we let her tell some of her favorite jokes, right? It was sort of like, yeah, this is why I want this book in the world. Other parents have responded to each, almost all of the essays about having a father who was distant from them. I don't know, having an autoimmune disease, right? I will say, there have been three different interviewers and or bookstore owners who have read the essay and then they lean in and like they grab my shoulder and they say, can I ask you a question? And my brain goes, oh, your kid has just come out as trans. And yes, every single time. So I get emails from like a friend of a friend, or because I ran a preschool and all of those families, many of those families were there when my kid transitioned, and my kid had been very, every school, day off, my kid would be at the preschool. So I am still getting people emailing me, right, about their kid. I don't know. I'm hopeful that I know it's a small book from a small press, right? No major reviews, but I'm hopeful that the people who read it um, can just be more open-hearted about something they may not be familiar with.
Well, it's also about representation. And for that little girl, she saw herself
Yeah.
on the page. And that is such a beautiful thing when people think that, they're either being judged or they're not seen to see themselves out in the world. And I think, your book could just as easily have been named Permission because,
Huh.
there's so little, if any, judgment in the book. And or if there is judgment, it's like you examine it like a Rubik's Cube and try to be curious about it and move away from the judgment. And so yeah, it's I just encourage everybody who hasn't yet read it to do so. And it's just perfect for the times we're living in right now. Sadly, I mean, I wish it weren't so perfect, but it is sort of an antidote to some of what's happening in you know, in our country right now. So
Yeah, the world needs our art right now. Like
yeah.
whatever we're creating with our art. This is in authoritarian cultures. I've been reading a bit, right? And it's the artists who keep hope alive for the rest of the people,
Yeah.
right? So we need to create.
Oh,
Do
you
we have any
guys,
other?
yeah, that was great. Anyone want to ask one more question? Well, I would just want to say, first of all, thank you so much to Amy and Ren. That was an amazing discussion to get to listen in on. So thank you guys so much. I want to so speaking about when Ren was just saying we need art, I'm going to put this in the chat, but these are the two events coming up January 7th. One is at 1 p.m., one is at 7. They're the same thing. It's to set your writing intentions for 2026. We're going to do it as a community. So please sign up for one of those. It's a Wednesday, it's January 7th, 1 p.m. or 7 Eastern, whichever works for you. But it's going to be cool. We're going to have some special guests. Ronit Plank is coming to one of them. She's a podcaster. There's a few cool people coming. So it'll just be, I think it's going to be really fun. And it's a way to just kind of make ourselves start our writing practice for the year. So sign up if you can. And then I wanted to mention, so in February, we have Carol's book, which is When News Breaks. Let me get I'm going to get the link out of Amazon or which one? Barnes and Noble?
It's on Amazon, Bookshop, Barnes and Noble, everywhere books are sold,
Okay,
as
yeah.
far as I
So here,
know.
I'm just going to give you the Barnes
I'm
and
with a
Noble
small
link.
press too.
This one's not till February. So the top one is the January book, which I'm not sure if I had a different January book, but now this is the January book. It's the top one. It's called Bagel for Your Thoughts. It is such an easy read. It's just like a love story. Gabra Zachman, who's in the community, wrote it. If anyone wants to lead that one, let me know. But I think it's going to be really cool. It's a great book. I've read some of it because she's in my writing group, but it's a really fun love story. So very light, something to read over the holidays because I know we're kind of last minute. So I decided to throw that one in there for January. I'll set the time. It'll probably be like mid to late January, and then Carol's will be February. Lindsay's going to lead us in that one. So who are both here. So I think that that's everything. But I honestly, Ren, I cannot wait to read your book. I have to say, like, I don't know what I've been waiting for, except that it's never where I am when I want to read it. So,
Well, as one reviewer said, it's really short.
and Jocelyn was saying to me in a text, she's like, it's such a beautiful book, and it really is like a beautiful book. So even just to like have it on your shelf, I think it's just going to be it's a good addition. So and if you guys could take a minute and review Carol's book, review Ren's book on
Mhm.
Amazon, it just matters
Yes.
that algorithm. So even if you haven't read it yet, just to be like, you don't, it doesn't even remember Al was like, it doesn't even matter how many stars, give it however many you feel like, and then
Yeah.
a little review. And it's just really for the numbers. Yeah, Carol, what was your?
So I learned a benefit of you reviewing an author feeds the algorithm in a way that helps other similar authors.
Oh, nice.
So it's not about just the author, one author, it's about similar authors. So it knows that, for example, I'm a debut memoirist, and it's going to make those recommendations to people. So that's how new books, it's part of how new books get introduced to readers. So there's a virtuous cycle. If you can think of an algorithm as being virtuous at all, there it's information that's embedded in that review so that you see writers you might not normally see, and therein lies the benefit.
I love it.
How's that?
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. So I want to just also quickly mention tomorrow we have a meeting for book launch. So if anyone wants to come to that, it's at 5 p.m. Eastern. And hopefully a few people will show up. I have some thoughts about it. I as somebody who's been watching some launches and recent launches, and anyone who wants to come and tell us about your launch. I know, Carol, you said you can't make it
I
tomorrow.
know. No, I can't.
But hopefully some people will come. I'll be there, so it'll be just fun to chat. So if you haven't joined that section of prose, if you go into the site, it's on the left. If you look like scroll down there's like a left hand menu. Here, I'm going to share screen so you can look at it. It's this like on the left side of the like prose playground. If you like scroll down here, it's this launch your book and just like join it. I think there's up here it'll say join, and then you just join, and then you'll get the alerts and stuff. So I recommend that. It's a good group. Anyway, all right, you guys, thank you all so much. Ren, any last words or?
No, just go create your art. That's what we need.
Love it.
Yeah.
All
Yay.
right, thanks, guys. Thanks, everyone.
Thank
I'll see
you.
you guys around. Bye. Happy holidays.
Yeah.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Jocelyn.
Congrats. So great.
Congratulations.